Sebastian Stone, the billionaire CEO of Stone Tech Industries, had built a perfect life for himself until one unexpected Thanksgiving changed everything. He invited his ex-wife to the dinner, but when she arrived in a $500 million jet, bringing two small boys he didn't recognize, his world was turned upside down. These weren't just any boys. They were his sons, twins, and he'd never even known they existed. Sebastian's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips as he stared at the security footage on his phone. The sleek private jet he saw landing on his private airstrip wasn't just any jet. It was Emma's, his ex-wife, the woman he hadn't seen in 6 years. Why would she show up now of all times? He muttered, glancing at his wife, Chloe, who was carefully setting the Thanksgiving table. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. His mother, Veronica, hurried to answer it, but no one could have prepared her for what awaited inside. As Sebastian stepped into the foyer, time seemed to stretch, then freeze. There stood Emma, looking every bit the successful entrepreneur she had become. But it wasn't her success that took his breath away. It was the two small boys standing beside her, mirror images of each other, with eyes he knew all too well, staring back at him. "Hi," one of the twins said, breaking the heavy silence. "I'm Sam. This is Noah. Are you really our dad?" The words hit Sebastian like a physical blow. His knees wobbled as he gripped the wall for support. He couldn't breathe. "Emma," he croaked. "What is this? How could you not tell me about this?" Emma's laugh was hollow. "I tried. Do you remember the voicemail I left right after you ended things? The one you never returned? Guess building billion-dollar companies doesn't leave much time for checking messages from the past, huh?" Behind him, Chloe's voice cracked with disbelief. "Sebastian, what's going on? Who are these children?" Hit subscribe if you believe everyone deserves to know the truth, no matter how inconvenient. Only people like Sebastian, burying their past to chase success, would let something like this go on. Don't be like him. Subscribe if you stand for fairness. And if you think children deserve to know both their parents, comment, "I believe in second chances." Don't side with people who hide the truth. As the words hung in the air, Veronica quickly recovered, her aristocratic calm softening as she knelt in front of the twins. "Well, aren't you two the most handsome young men I've ever seen?" she said, trying to ease the tension, her voice surprisingly warm. But Sebastian was still reeling, unable to move. The shocking truth of the boy's paternity was sinking in slowly, like ice water in his veins. "Sam, Noah, you're my sons," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. He didn't know how this was possible. Emma had been his past, a chapter he thought he had closed. Yet here they were, standing in front of him, with a story of their own that he hadn't been a part of. As Chloe began to recover from her shock, her gaze turned icy. She stepped forward, her tone cold. "You invited your ex-wife to our first Thanksgiving, Sebastian? You didn't even mention you had children. This wasn't part of the plan. What now?" The weight of Chloe's words hit him hard. His life, meticulously planned and perfectly executed, was crumbling around him. He had worked so hard to build this empire, yet here was his past, a past he had left behind, facing him, demanding answers. Sebastian barely registered the muffled sound of the Thanksgiving dinner continuing in the other room. His mind was spinning as his eyes remained fixed on the twins, Sam and Noah, their innocent faces staring back at him with a question that cut deeper than any business deal or boardroom confrontation. "Are you really our dad?" The silence in the foyer was suffocating. Finally, Emma's voice broke through the tension, her tone steady but laced with the weight of years of hurt. "You were never supposed to find out like this, Sebastian," Emma said quietly, looking past him at the twins. She shook her head slightly, as if the pain of their shared history still clung to her. "But I tried. God, I tried to reach you. I left messages. I wrote letters. I even sent emails to your personal account, but you changed everything. Your number, your email. I was never able to reach you after you left." Sebastian's chest tightened as he absorbed her words, the truth of her confession settling like a stone in his stomach. He hadn't wanted to face it then, but now, standing in front of her, facing the children he didn't know existed, it was undeniable. He had shut her out. He remembered the days after their breakup, those long, sleepless nights spent poring over business reports, drafting emails, meetings that stretched into the early hours of the morning. He remembered burying himself in work, rationalizing that his company needed him, that he had to save the legacy his father had left him. He had told himself it was for them, for us. But now, standing here, the reality hit him like a truck. I never saw them, he stammered, barely able to meet Emma's eyes. The messages, the letters, I never checked them. I was so wrapped up in everything else. My father's death, the takeover. Your empire, Emma interrupted softly, her eyes cold. The empire you chose over your own family. Sebastian flinched. The words stung more than he cared to admit. He had never fully processed what he had done to Emma, not the hurt of their breakup, but the consequences that followed. He had convinced himself that he was doing the right thing, that burying their past was the best option. But as he looked at Sam and Noah, his own reflection staring back at him, he felt the weight of his own selfishness. I didn't want this for you, Emma continued, her voice quieter now, but no less filled with emotion. I never wanted to raise them alone. But when you left, when you made it clear you had no room for us in your world anymore, I had no choice. I had to protect them. I couldn't tell them about you, couldn't let them grow up expecting a father who wasn't there. Sebastian's heart twisted in his chest. He had always believed that his success justified his sacrifices, that it made everything worth it. But now, he saw the emptiness of that belief. What had it been for? Behind him, he could feel Lauren's presence. She had been quiet for a while, but he could feel her gaze burning into his back. It was a look of betrayal, one he had never expected from her. But he should have known. He had kept this secret from her, buried it so deep that not even he had dared to confront it until now. Lauren's voice broke through the silence, brittle and raw. Is this true, Sebastian? These children, are they really yours? Her words landed like a slap. He couldn't answer immediately. The question was too loaded. How could he explain to her the truth he had buried? How could he explain why he hadn't told her about Emma or the twins? The perfect life they'd built together had been built on a lie of omission, but a lie nonetheless. Lauren's face paled as she took a step back, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. How long were you planning to keep this from me, Sebastian? How many more secrets do you have hidden away? You invited your ex-wife into our home, into my home, without telling me you had children with her? Why? What else have you been hiding? Sebastian's pulse quickened. He hadn't wanted to hurt Lauren, hadn't wanted to risk everything they had built together. But now, with the twins standing in front of him, he realized how fragile his life with Lauren truly was. Was she the woman he had married, the woman he loved? Or was she a partner in his perfect world, a world that had now begun to fracture at the seams? I never meant for it to be like this, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I never meant to hurt you, Lauren. You have to believe me. But even as he spoke, he wasn't sure if she could ever believe him again. Lauren's expression hardened. Maybe I'm the one who's been blind all along. I thought we had a future, Sebastian. I thought we had honesty. But now, I'm not sure who you really are. And frankly, I'm not sure I can trust you anymore. Her words stung more than he could have imagined, but he knew she was right. The perfect life he had built, his empire, his marriage, was crumbling because he had failed to be honest, failed to be the man he thought he was. As Lauren turned and walked out of the foyer, Sebastian could feel the walls closing in around him. He hadn't just lost a wife, he was losing his grip on everything he had worked for. But in the midst of this chaos, the reality of Sam and Noah, their innocent eyes, their questions, reminded him of something he had neglected for far too long, the price of success, and the toll it took on the people you loved. He had lost so much, and now he wasn't sure how to fix it. The heavy silence in the foyer stretched like a taut rope ready to snap. Sebastian's mind raced, his chest tight as the weight of Emma's presence settled over him. The Thanksgiving dinner that was supposed to be the perfect celebration now felt like a distant memory. Lauren stood rigid beside him, her eyes wide, her hands clenched at her sides. Across from them, Emma remained calm, though her eyes held a storm of emotions that Sebastian couldn't quite read. The moment felt like it was frozen in time, the moment when everything he had built for himself, everything he had so carefully controlled, was unraveling before his eyes. "Lauren, I can explain," Sebastian said, his voice low, almost pleading, as he turned to his wife. She hadn't spoken a word since Emma's arrival. She hadn't moved either, her eyes fixed on the two boys who had entered their home uninvited, two boys who were now a part of Sebastian's life, whether he was ready or not. The boys, Sam and Noah, sat near the large Christmas tree in the corner of the room, their wide eyes taking in every detail, as if they were trying to understand a world they hadn't been a part of before. "I don't think there's anything left to explain, Sebastian." Lauren's voice was cold, but it cracked with a pain that twisted his heart. She turned her gaze toward the twins for a moment, then back to him. "You've been hiding this from me, from all of us. How long were you planning to keep this secret?" Sebastian felt the sting of her words deep within him. "I never meant for it to happen this way," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I was going to tell you, Lauren. I never had the chance." "Never had the chance?" Lauren scoffed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Are you serious right now, Sebastian? You had years. I've been your wife for over a year. And you didn't even tell me about these kids? You invited your ex-wife here, into our home, to our Thanksgiving. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me?" "Lauren, please," he begged. "This wasn't planned. I never wanted to hurt you." Her eyes glinted with a mix of hurt and frustration, but she held her ground. "You didn't want to hurt me? You didn't want to hurt me? Sebastian, you've been living a lie, and you think I won't be hurt? Do you know how many times you've said that everything was fine, that we had nothing to hide? Do you know how many times you told me that I was the only one you wanted to build a future with, that there were no ghosts in your past?" The words stung. Each one felt like a punch to the gut. He had promised her everything, but now it seemed like his promises meant nothing. Behind them, Emma shifted slightly, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the tension swirling between Sebastian and Lauren. She hadn't said a word yet, but it was clear that she was waiting for her turn to speak. And when she did, her words would pierce through the already fragile wall of Sebastian's life. "Isn't this the part where you say you didn't mean to hurt me too?" Emma's voice was soft but sharp, her eyes narrowing slightly as she looked at Sebastian. "You know, the voicemail I left you? The one where I told you about the pregnancy? The one you never bothered to return? I thought you were different, Sebastian. I thought we had something real, something that mattered. But you made it perfectly clear that you chose your future over me, over us." Lauren looked at Emma now, her gaze shifting from her husband to his ex-wife. "And you let him do that? You just let him walk away and now you're back? After all these years?" she asked, her tone icy, though a faint tremor ran through her voice. "Do you think you can just show up and reclaim the life you thought you lost, Emma? Do you think you can just waltz in and tear apart everything he and I have built?" Emma's gaze flicked to Lauren, but there was no malice in her eyes. She wasn't angry, not at Lauren, not really. She was angry at the situation, at the choices that had been made, at the fact that Sebastian had been too blinded by his ambition to even check a voicemail. "I never wanted to tear anyone's life apart," Emma said calmly. "But you have to understand something. Those children are his, and they deserve to know their father. I tried to give them that, but for 5 years I did it alone. I never told them about him because I didn't want them to think they had a father who didn't care about them. And now, here we are." The room fell silent as Emma's words hung in the air. Sebastian's chest tightened further. He didn't want to be caught in this mess, didn't want to be forced to confront the decisions he had made. But the reality was undeniable. He had ignored the past. He had ignored the family he had abandoned. And now it was staring him in the face. "Do you really think I wanted this, Emma?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I never thought I'd be a father. And when you left, I thought I was free. I thought I was doing what was best for both of us. I thought that my success would make everything better." "Success doesn't replace a father's presence," Emma said softly, but firmly. "You should have fought for us. Sebastian, I didn't expect you to choose me over your empire, but I expected you to care, to at least show up when I needed you most. I tried to get you to care, but you were too focused on your career to see what you were losing. We've both paid the price for that. Sebastian stood frozen, his mind torn between the past and the present, between the life he had built with Lauren and the family he had lost with Emma. The tension in the room was unbearable, and the more he tried to explain, the worse it became. Lauren, now standing off to the side, her face pale, turned to him with a piercing gaze. So this is it then? This is the truth? I'm just supposed to accept this, accept that I married a man with a secret family? The words hit him like a physical blow. Sebastian knew that their marriage was fragile, but he hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected the entire foundation of his life to crack under the weight of a past he thought he could forget. The family dinner, once filled with laughter and warmth, had now become a battleground. The other guests, Veronica, Olivia, and the others, had long since retreated into uncomfortable silence, their eyes flicking nervously between the three of them. The family drama unfolding before them had become impossible to ignore. Sebastian's heart ached as he looked from Lauren to Emma, the two women in his life, both broken in their own ways by his mistakes. He couldn't fix this, couldn't undo what had been done. All he could do now was face the consequences of putting success before love, before his family. As Lauren's eyes filled with tears, Emma spoke again, her voice low but clear. Sebastian, the truth is out now, and you have to decide, what are you going to do about it? Lauren looked at Sebastian one last time, her face pale with the weight of the situation. What are you going to do, Sebastian? She repeated softly, her voice a mix of heartbreak and anger. Sebastian stood still, his body frozen as the realization settled in. The truth was now out in the open. His past had caught up with him, and no matter what he did, nothing would ever be the same. Sebastian stood at the door to the dining room, his hand gripping the polished wood frame as he watched the scene unfold. His mind was still spinning from the confrontation with Lauren. Her departure had left a chasm in the house, a physical and emotional void. He knew he had hurt her deeply, but the weight of the truth had come crashing down on him so suddenly. He didn't know how to fix it. As the tension from the confrontation lingered in the air, Sebastian's gaze shifted to the twins. Sam and Noah, sitting together on the couch, their innocent faces fixed on the Christmas tree with wonder. Their excitement over the decorations seemed to stand in stark contrast to the storm brewing inside the house. They were so full of life, so unaware of the whirlwind they had been thrust into. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to step into the room. "Hey guys," he said softly, his voice betraying his nerves. The twins turned in unison, their faces lighting up when they saw him. There was a warmth in their eyes that made something in Sebastian's chest tighten. His sons, his flesh and blood. Sam, the older twin by a few minutes, was the first to speak. "Hey, Dad!" His voice was filled with enthusiasm, and for a moment it felt like a punch in the gut. His son, was standing before him, calling him Dad like it was the most natural thing in the world. How had he missed these years? How had he allowed this moment to slip by? Hey, Sebastian replied, awkwardly shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I'm really glad you're here." The twins exchanged a glance before turning back to him. They were both clearly trying to make sense of the strange new reality they were being thrust into. They didn't know the man standing in front of them, not really. Yet there was an eagerness in their eyes, a child's innocence, that tugged at Sebastian's heart. So, Noah's voice cut through the silence, his face full of curiosity. "Do you live here all the time? Is this your house? It's like a castle." He gestured to the sprawling mansion around them, his wide eyes taking in every detail, from the grand chandelier to the enormous fireplace. Sebastian forced a smile, trying to mask the discomfort he felt. He wasn't used to talking to children, especially children he had no relationship with. "Yeah, this is my house," he said, trying to sound casual. "It's pretty big, huh?" "Yeah." Noah's grin widened. "It's way bigger than our apartment in Singapore." The comment caught Sebastian off guard, but it also made him feel a strange pang in his chest. His children, his sons, had grown up without him, in a world he wasn't a part of. He had missed their first steps, their first words, and now they were talking to him like strangers in his own home. Sam, his voice filled with excitement, jumped in. Do you have any cool stuff here, like toys or games? We saw a game room earlier, but I don't think it was open. Sebastian nodded slowly, trying to keep the conversation going, despite the awkwardness gnawing at him. Yeah, there's a game room downstairs. It's got a bunch of cool stuff, including a model train set my dad built. Both twins perked up at the mention of the train set, their eyes lighting up with excitement. A train set? Sam asked eagerly. Like a real train? Well, not exactly, Sebastian said with a laugh. But it's a pretty cool setup. You guys can see it if you want. The twins exchanged looks, their curiosity evident. They didn't know him. Not really. And yet they seemed so eager to be around him, to bond with him. Sebastian's heart ached as he led them toward the game room. Every question they asked, every word they spoke, felt like an echo of all the time he had missed. As they walked down the hallway, Sam looked up at him, his voice soft and tentative. So, Dad, what do you do for work? Like, how do you make all this money? Sebastian's breath caught in his throat. How did he explain the years of his life he had dedicated to building his empire? The sacrifices he had made, the choices that had led him to this moment? He thought about the long hours, the sleepless nights, the constant grind of the business world. It had consumed him. But now, standing here with Sam and Noah, he realized just how much he had lost in the process. I run a company, Sebastian said, his voice tight. I build things, big things. It takes a lot of work, but it's also a lot of responsibility. Sam nodded, as if processing the information, while Noah chimed in from the other side of the room. Do you build trains too? Sebastian chuckled, the sound bittersweet. No, not trains, but I build big buildings and some other projects. It's kind of like making something really big and important. Noah's face lit up with the kind of excitement only a child could muster. That sounds cool. Maybe I'll do that when I grow up, but I want to make rockets instead of buildings. Sebastian's heart softened as he looked at the twins. Their innocence, their hope, it reminded him of how much he had taken for granted. He wasn't just their father. He was the man who had failed them for 5 years, a man who had been so consumed by his own ambition that he couldn't see the life slipping away from him. A long silence stretched between them as the twins continued to explore the room. Sebastian stayed close, watching them closely. They didn't seem angry. They didn't seem resentful. They were just curious. But the more he thought about it, the harder it became to ignore the truth. These were his children. They had been his responsibility, his future. And now, they were strangers, wandering through his home like tourists, seeking answers he wasn't prepared to give. After a few moments, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. You guys are really smart, he said, trying to find the right words. You know, I didn't get to see you grow up, and I'm really sorry about that, but I'm here now, and I want to be part of your lives. I can't change the past, but I want to be here for you from now on. The twins stopped in their tracks, their faces tilting up to look at him. Sam, ever the curious one, asked, Why didn't you come before? Mom said you didn't know about us, but I don't get it. Why didn't you want to meet us? Sebastian froze, the question hitting him harder than he expected. He hadn't been prepared for this. How could he explain the mess he had made of his own life? The truth was, he had been too afraid to face them, too afraid of what it meant. But standing here now, with Sam and Noah looking up at him, all he could feel was regret. I didn't know, he said quietly, and I wish I had. I made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't think things through. I was focused on other things, and I lost track of what really mattered. But I'm not going anywhere now. I want to make it right. The room was quiet, save for the soft sound of the twins breathing. They were looking at him differently now, less like strangers and more like children seeking the father they had never known. And in that moment, Sebastian realized something crucial. He had a chance to be a father, a real one, not just a figurehead or an afterthought, a present father. But as they began to wander back toward the Christmas tree, Sam turned back to him. Do you have a lot of other people who live here, Dad? Sebastian blinked, a little taken aback by the question. Other people? Like, other kids? Or do you live alone? Sam asked, his voice innocent but filled with a curiosity that pierced through the layers of Sebastian's guilt. Before he could answer, Lauren appeared in the doorway. Her face was a mask of controlled emotion, but the tension radiating off her was palpable. She had been gone long enough to process her own feelings, but the strain in her eyes told Sebastian that the damage was far from repaired. Sebastian, she said, her voice a little hoarse, I'm leaving. I can't stay here. Not with all this, not with your past showing up like this. Sebastian's heart sank. He had known this was coming, but hearing her say it out loud made it real. The rift between them was widening, and no amount of apologies or explanations could fix it now. I understand, he said softly, his voice heavy with regret. I'm sorry, Lauren. I didn't mean for this to happen. Lauren didn't say anything at first. She just turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, caught between his wife's departure and the sons he had just discovered. The twins, oblivious to the pain in the air, continued to play with the ornaments on the tree, their laughter filling the space. But Sebastian couldn't shake the feeling that his entire world was collapsing. He had lost Lauren. He had lost years with his children. And now, the man he had become seemed so far removed from the one he had hoped to be. Lauren, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the children's laughter. But she was already gone. The mansion was still, the air heavy with the remnants of tension that had settled like a storm cloud. After Lauren's abrupt departure, Sebastian felt the weight of everything crash in on him. The life he had meticulously built was crumbling, piece by piece, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His marriage was fractured, and his past, the one he thought he had left behind, had come roaring back, dragging everything with it. He walked slowly through the house, passing the grand staircase, the quiet rooms, and the untouched dinner table. The guests, those who hadn't fled in the wake of the chaos, sat in the living room, awkwardly pretending not to notice the shift in the atmosphere. The house was too big, too cold now, too empty. But as he made his way to the study, his mind wasn't on the house or the guests. He was focused on the conversation he had to have, one that had been years in the making. He had to speak to Emma, the twins' mother, the woman he had once loved and abandoned. He opened the door to the study, finding her standing by the window, her figure outlined by the soft glow of the evening light. She turned when she heard him enter, her face unreadable. There was no warmth in her eyes, no softness. Only the quiet steel of a woman who had endured more than her fair share of hardship. I think we need to talk, Sebastian said, his voice heavy, filled with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He wasn't sure how to begin. He had made so many mistakes, so many wrong choices, and now here they were, face to face, again. Emma didn't speak immediately. She just nodded, her gaze fixed on him as if she were waiting for him to finally say the words that had been hanging between them for years. I was wrong, Emma, Sebastian said, his voice rough. I was selfish, and I ended things with you so callously. I didn't see it then, but now I see the damage I caused, the pain, the way I walked away from you, and everything we could have had. Emma's eyes softened slightly, but her voice was steady, measured. You didn't just walk away, Sebastian. You disappeared. I tried reaching out to you, called you, emailed you, even sent letters, but I never heard back. I tried to give you space, thinking maybe you just needed time, but you never came back. I never heard from you again. Sebastian closed his eyes, guilt surging through him like a tidal wave. He had told himself he had no choice, that his focus had to be on the company, on his future. But that was a lie. He had buried everything, his love for her, his responsibility toward her, their future, underneath the weight of his ambition. I didn't know, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I changed my number. I switched emails. I thought that maybe it would be easier to just let go of everything. I thought I was doing what was best for both of us, that you would understand. But now I see that I was wrong. I should have fought for you. I should have fought for us. Emma sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly as the weight of their shared past seemed to settle between them. You never fought for me, Sebastian. You fought for your empire. You fought for your future. And in doing so, you left me to fight alone. Her words stung, each one a sharp reminder of his failings. He had been so caught up in building something, his business, his legacy, that he had neglected the people who mattered most, the people who loved him. I'm sorry, he said, his voice trembling with the weight of his regret. I failed you, and I failed our children. At the mention of the twins, Emma's expression softened. She turned toward the window, gazing out at the sprawling grounds, her voice quieter now. I never wanted to keep them from you, Sebastian. I never wanted to raise them alone, but when I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I knew you were ambitious, that you had a life ahead of you, and I didn't want to ruin it. So I made the decision to raise them on my own. I couldn't tell them about you because I didn't want them to think they had a father who didn't care. I didn't want them to hurt the way I did. Sebastian felt his throat tighten as he watched her. He had no idea the toll it had taken on her. The emotional weight she had carried, raising 2 children alone, the sacrifices she had made. He had been so wrapped up in his own world, his own goals, that he hadn't even stopped to consider how it might have been for her, for them. I'm sorry, he said again, this time with more conviction. I wasn't there for you when you needed me. I wasn't there for them. And that's something I can never take back. But I want to be here now, for you, for the boys. I don't want to lose them again. Emma turned to face him, her eyes softening, but there was still a guardedness in her expression. It's not that simple, Sebastian. You can't just come in and expect everything to fall into place. We've lived without you for so long. The boys have lived without you. They've made their own lives. And now, they're confused. They don't understand why their father is suddenly here, trying to make up for lost time. Sebastian nodded, the truth of her words sinking deep into him. I know, he said, his voice filled with sorrow. I don't expect them to just accept me. I don't expect anything to be easy. But I want to be a part of their lives. I want to be there for them, for you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. Emma studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face, as if weighing his sincerity. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. You need to prove that, Sebastian. Not with words, but with actions. The boys deserve consistency. They deserve a father who shows up, not just in the big moments, but in the small ones too. If you really want to be a part of their lives, you'll have to earn their trust. Sebastian nodded, his heart heavy with the realization that he had a long road ahead of him. But for the first time in years, he felt like there was hope. Hope that he could rebuild the relationships he had destroyed. Hope that he could be the father his sons deserved. Before he could respond, the door to the study opened, and Lauren appeared, her face drawn and weary. She had clearly been listening to their conversation from the hallway. Lauren, Sebastian began, his voice faltering. I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me right now, but I want to make things right. I want to fix what's broken. Lauren didn't meet his eyes. Instead, she looked at Emma, then back at Sebastian. I'm not sure I can do this, Sebastian. I'm not sure I can accept your past like this. It's too much, too soon, and I'm not sure I can share you with them, with her. Emma's face tightened at Lauren's words, but she didn't respond. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, the weight of everything still lingering. I know this is hard, Sebastian said softly, his voice sincere. But I can't change the past. I can't undo what's been done. But I want to try, Lauren. For you, for the boys, for all of us. Lauren looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Sebastian. I don't know if I can accept this. I don't know if I can share you with them. Sebastian felt a pang of desperation, but he knew he couldn't force her to accept the situation. He could only do his part and hope that in time she would come to understand. As Lauren turned and walked out of the room, Sebastian felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. His marriage was hanging by a thread, His relationship with his sons was just beginning, and he had no idea how it would all play out. But one thing was certain: he couldn't undo the past. All he could do was face the consequences and try to move forward. The house felt quieter now, almost unnaturally so. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the warm chatter of Thanksgiving dinner, all had been replaced by a deafening silence that hung over the empty rooms like a cloud. The events of the day had shifted the atmosphere in ways that Sebastian couldn't ignore. He had never expected his life to be uprooted in such a brutal, fast-paced way, yet here he was, standing in the remnants of what had once been a perfect life, one he had built with nothing but hard work, ambition, and an iron will to succeed. And now, it was all crashing down. Sebastian had been up all night, pacing, reflecting, and trying to come to terms with the consequences of his actions. His mind was a maze of conflicting thoughts, torn between his past and his present, his loyalty to Lauren and his newfound responsibility as a father. The tension from the dinner had stayed with him, clouding his every thought. As dawn broke, casting soft light through the large windows of the living room, Sebastian sank into the leather chair by the fire. His fingers gripped the edge of the armrest, the weight of everything pressing down on him. He had spent so much of his life building this empire, but he had done so at the expense of the people who mattered most. And now, the life he had carefully crafted seemed to be slipping through his fingers. His phone buzzed on the coffee table in front of him, interrupting his spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Lauren. "We need to talk." His heart skipped a beat. The message felt like a cold warning. He had known this moment was coming. He had seen the signs for days. Lauren had been distant, her anger simmering beneath her perfect facade. But now, after everything that had happened, he feared that this would be the conversation that ended everything. With a deep breath, Sebastian grabbed the phone and dialed her number. Lauren's voice, when she answered, was tight, controlled. "Sebastian, I can't keep pretending everything's okay." His heart sank. He had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. "I'm not asking you to pretend," he said, his voice steady, though it masked the storm of emotion brewing inside him. "But we need to talk. We need to figure this out, together." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Lauren spoke, her voice edged with finality. "I don't know if we can, Sebastian. I really don't. I need to be honest with you. I can't live in a marriage where I feel like I'm constantly competing with your past." The words stung. But Sebastian knew she was right. The past, his past with Emma, with the twins, was always going to be a shadow over their relationship. "I never meant for you to feel like that," he said, his voice low. "But the truth is, Lauren, this is my past, and now it's part of our present. I can't just erase it. I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to make things right." Lauren's sigh was heavy. "I don't know if I can accept that, Sebastian. I don't know if I can accept them, your kids, and everything that comes with it." Sebastian's pulse quickened. He had known the ultimatum was coming, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. "Lauren, please, you can't ask me to choose between you and my children. I can't do that." A long silence followed, and when Lauren spoke again, her voice was laced with pain. "Then I guess you've made your choice." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. His heart ached as he realized just how far apart they had drifted. He had fought for his success, for the empire he had built, but in doing so, he had neglected everything else: his marriage, his wife, and now, his children. "I'm sorry, Lauren," he said, his voice cracking. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," she whispered, "but I can't do this anymore. I need space, Sebastian. I need to figure out what's next for me." "Lauren," Sebastian's voice faltered, "please don't leave." But it was too late. She had already made her decision. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "Goodbye, Sebastian." As the call ended, Sebastian was left in the quiet, his world spinning faster than he could keep up with. The finality in Lauren's words rang in his ears, and he felt a deep, gnawing ache in his chest. He had lost her. But the pain of losing Lauren was nothing compared to the realization that he had missed so much time with his sons. The twins, Sam and Noah, were real. They were his flesh and blood. And now they were asking questions that he wasn't prepared to answer. Just then, another message flashed on his screen. It was from Emma. "We need to talk too." The conversation with Lauren had been painful, but the one he was about to have with Emma felt like it would be just as difficult. He had spent so many years building his empire, convincing himself that success was everything. And now, standing on the precipice of losing it all, he realized just how much he had sacrificed. He had missed out on a family he could never get back. He stood up from the chair, his body heavy with the weight of his decisions, and walked toward the study, his mind still reeling. When he reached the door, he paused, taking a deep breath before entering. Emma was sitting by the window again, her face soft with exhaustion. But there was something else in her eyes now, something that had softened in the wake of their conversation earlier. "Sebastian," she said quietly, without looking at him. "I didn't want this to be a battlefield. But I can't pretend everything is fine, not after everything that's happened." Sebastian stepped forward, his heart heavy. I know I've messed up, Emma. I've been so focused on myself, on my business, that I forgot about everything else that matters. I hurt you, and I hurt our sons." Emma turned to look at him, her eyes soft but filled with sadness. "You didn't just hurt me, Sebastian. You hurt yourself. You hurt our family. But you've got to understand something. I did this on my own. I didn't want to, but I had to. You were gone, Sebastian. You weren't there for us." Sebastian's throat tightened. He had no defense for the truth of her words. "I know," he whispered. "I was wrong." Emma sighed, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I didn't want to keep the boys from you, but I didn't know how to reach you. I didn't know how to tell you about them without causing you more pain. But the truth is, Sebastian, I couldn't raise them in the shadow of your absence. I couldn't make them believe in a man who wasn't there." Sebastian closed his eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. He had made so many mistakes. He had abandoned them when they needed him most. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice thick with emotion. "I was selfish. I was a coward. And I failed you both." Emma's eyes softened, but there was still a distance between them that couldn't be bridged by apologies alone. "I know you're sorry, Sebastian, but sorry doesn't change what's happened. The boys have already lived without you. They've built their lives without you." Sebastian felt the full weight of her words. He had missed everything, the milestones, the moments, and now the sons he had never known were asking questions he didn't know how to answer. "They need consistency," Emma said softly, "and they need you to show up, not just in the big moments, but in the everyday ones too. I can't do this alone anymore. I need you to be here, for them." Sebastian nodded, his heart breaking at the thought of all the years he had lost. "I will be here, Emma. I promise you. I'll be here for them." Emma met his eyes, her gaze firm but tinged with the exhaustion of a woman who had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders for far too long. "I hope you can keep that promise, Sebastian, for their sake." The room was quiet, the weight of their conversation hanging heavily between them. Sebastian knew he had a long road ahead of him. He had lost Lauren. He had lost the life he had once known, and now he had to rebuild what had been shattered. But in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to lose his sons. Not again. The morning light filtered through the large windows of the study, casting long shadows across the room. Sebastian stood by the desk, his fingers tracing the edge of his father's old leather-bound journal. It felt almost absurd how long he had ignored the things that truly mattered in his life. Now, standing in the quiet aftermath of everything that had happened, he realized just how much time he had wasted chasing a future that had never really belonged to him. The house felt empty. The stillness was oppressive, a constant reminder that everything had changed and nothing would be the same. Lauren had left the night before, her bags packed with finality. The tension between them had become too great for her to ignore, and she had made her choice. Sebastian understood, even if it broke him inside. His marriage was on the brink of collapse, and he was still reeling from the consequences of his past decisions. But it wasn't just his marriage that was fractured. His relationship with his sons, Sam and Noah, was something he had never even begun to understand. And now, after 5 years of absence, they were finally real to him. They were no longer just faces in a picture, they were living, breathing children who needed him. With a sigh, Sebastian moved away from the desk and made his way toward the kitchen. He had a plan. It wasn't a grand plan or a quick fix, but it was something, a starting point. He needed to change, and he needed to prove to Emma, to the boys, and to himself that he could be the father he had failed to be all these years. The twins were in the backyard, their small bodies running around the lush green lawn with a carefree energy that reminded Sebastian of his own childhood. He had forgotten what it felt like to just be, without the pressure of business deals or the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. Watching them now, he felt the first flicker of hope that perhaps he could make up for the lost years. "Hey guys," Sebastian called, his voice tentative at first. "You want to play?" Sam stopped in his tracks, his wide brown eyes looking up at him. "Play?" he repeated, his small lips curving into a tentative smile. "What do you want to play, Dad?" Sebastian's heart swelled at the word. Dad. He'd never heard it before, not from his own children, and hearing it now, spoken so innocently, so freely, almost knocked the wind out of him. "Well," he said, kneeling down to their level, "how about a game of soccer? I'm pretty good, you know." Sam and Noah exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. Then, in perfect unison, they both nodded. "Soccer!" they exclaimed together. Sebastian grinned, his heart lightening a little as he stood up and retrieved a soccer ball from the garage. He threw it into the air, kicking it toward them with a gentle force. The boys ran after it, their laughter ringing out like music in the quiet morning. For the first time in a long while, Sebastian felt a sense of purpose, something he hadn't felt since he had taken over the company and buried his personal life beneath the demands of success. As he watched Sam and Noah kick the ball back and forth, he felt a weight in his chest, the weight of the years he had missed. But he couldn't dwell on that now. He couldn't change the past. He had to focus on the present, on the future, and on being the father they needed. Later that afternoon, after they had played soccer for what felt like hours, Sebastian and the twins sat on the back steps, catching their breath. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the garden. Sebastian glanced over at Emma, who was watching them from the porch. She hadn't said much since the chaos of Thanksgiving, but he could see the way she was studying him, watching his every move, assessing whether or not he was truly capable of being the father he had promised to be. She wasn't sure, and he didn't blame her. Trust was something that had to be earned, not just given. He stood up, walking over to her slowly. "I think they're getting the hang of it," he said with a small smile, his voice soft. Emma nodded, her arms crossed over her chest. "They're good boys. They deserve to know their father." Sebastian felt a pang in his chest. He had spent so long convincing himself that his ambition, his company, was the only thing that mattered. But now, standing here with his sons, he realized how wrong he had been. He had spent so many years neglecting what truly mattered. "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I've been absent, Emma, and I can't change that. But I'm here now. I'm trying. I'll do whatever it takes to be part of their lives." Emma's gaze softened, though there was still a guardedness in her eyes. "You've already missed so much, Sebastian. The boys have their own lives now. They've built their own routines. It's not going to be easy to fit into that." Sebastian nodded. I know it won't be easy. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm not giving up on them, or on you." Emma took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. "I'm not sure I can trust you again, Sebastian. Not yet. You hurt me, and you hurt them. But if you really want to make this right, you have to show me. You have to show us. You can't just say the words. You have to act on them." Sebastian's heart sank, but he understood. She had every right to feel that way. He had done nothing but fail her, but he wouldn't give up, not now, not when there was still a chance. "I'll show you. he said quietly, his voice steady. "I'll prove it to you, Emma, and to them." The next few days passed in a blur. Sebastian spent every moment he could with Sam and Noah, trying to connect with them, to make up for the years he had lost. They were curious about everything, about his work, about the life he had built, about why he hadn't been around, and every question they asked hit Sebastian like a punch to the gut. He had so many answers, so many things he wanted to explain. But every time he opened his mouth, he was reminded of how much he had failed them, how many moments he had missed. But despite the weight of guilt that constantly lingered, he kept trying. He took them to the park, to the zoo, to the lake near the mansion. He did everything he could to be present. He helped them with their homework, played games with them, and even taught them how to build a treehouse in the backyard. Small moments, but moments that meant everything. In the evenings, when the twins were asleep, Sebastian would sit in the study, his mind racing. He knew he had a long road ahead of him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: he couldn't lose them again. He couldn't lose his chance to be the father they deserved. But at the same time, he couldn't forget about Lauren. Her absence weighed heavily on him. She had walked away, and he couldn't blame her, but that didn't make it any easier. He hadn't expected things to be this complicated. He hadn't expected to have to choose between the family he had with Lauren and the family he had with Emma. But life wasn't neat. It wasn't simple. And now he had to figure out how to make it all work. He couldn't undo the past, but he could start fresh. He could be the man, the father, the husband that he had failed to be before. And maybe, just maybe, he could repair the damage he had done. But for now, he had to focus on the present, on being there for Sam and Noah, on proving to Emma that he could be the father they needed. The days were passing quickly, and with each one, Sebastian felt like he was closer to finding some semblance of balance. He had made mistakes, a lot of mistakes, but he wasn't going to let those mistakes define him. Not anymore. He looked out the window, his thoughts still on Lauren. He wasn't sure what would happen between them, but he couldn't let it stop him from moving forward. The boys needed him. They needed to know that he was here, that he was going to stick around. As he turned away from the window and walked back into the house, he made a promise to himself. He wasn't going to repeat the mistakes of the past. This time, he would show up. This time, he would be present. For them, for Emma, for himself. And maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for the future. The house was eerily quiet as the morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows on the polished hardwood floors. It had been a few days since the Thanksgiving fiasco, and the tension in the air still clung to every corner of the house. Sebastian stood by the window in the living room, his thoughts swirling. The weight of the decisions he had made and the lives he had disrupted was more suffocating than ever. Lauren had been distant, her cold silences growing louder by the day. She had retreated into herself, her presence in the house more of an absence than anything else. Sebastian could feel her slipping away, and he knew deep down that there was nothing he could do to stop it. The damage had already been done. He had tried. He had tried to rebuild their marriage, to fix everything he had broken. But there were cracks in their relationship that were too deep to mend. And the truth was, he had made his choice a long time ago. The moment he chose his career over his family, over her, was the moment their future together had started to unravel. As the day wore on, he found himself lost in thought again, his mind still reeling from the whirlwind of events. He had made plans to meet with Emma later that afternoon to discuss their next steps with the boys, but the looming conversation with Lauren weighed heavily on him. He couldn't avoid it any longer. It was time to face the truth, whatever it was. When Lauren walked into the living room later that afternoon, Sebastian's heart sank. She had packed a bag, her eyes red from the tears she had shed in silence for days. She stood at the threshold of the room, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Sebastian," she began, her voice tight, "we need to talk." The words were loaded with finality. Sebastian knew what was coming, but hearing it aloud felt like a punch to the gut. "I know," he said, his voice steady, though his insides were in turmoil. "I've been waiting for this." Lauren walked further into the room, dropping her bag by the door with a heavy thud. She turned to face him, her expression a mixture of hurt and anger. The woman he had married, the woman he thought he knew, seemed like a stranger now. "I can't do this anymore, Sebastian," she said quietly, the words trembling on her lips. "I can't pretend that everything is okay. You've lied to me, you've kept secrets, and now you have children. Children you didn't even tell me about. How can I live with that?" Sebastian took a step forward, his chest tightening with every word she spoke. He knew she was right. He had kept so much from her. He had buried his past, buried Emma and the boys, and focused all his energy on building a life that, in the end, felt hollow. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his voice raw with regret. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Lauren's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. "It doesn't matter now. You did hurt me, and you hurt them too. You think you can just waltz back into my life after all these years and make everything better? You've abandoned me, Sebastian. And now, you've abandoned your own wife and your family. How can I trust you again?" Sebastian's stomach churned as the words hit him like a tidal wave. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "But I'm not asking you to. I just need you to know that I tried. I tried to fix everything, but I don't think I can anymore. Not with you." The silence between them was heavy, thick with the weight of everything left unsaid. Lauren turned her gaze away, her fingers trembling as she fiddled with the zipper of her bag. "I don't know if I can stay here with you anymore, Sebastian. This isn't the life I signed up for. I don't recognize you anymore, and I don't know if I can forgive you for all the years you've spent running from us." Sebastian watched her, his heart breaking into pieces. He had made so many mistakes, and now it felt like it was too late to fix any of them. He had missed his chance. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice choked. "I never meant to hurt you." Lauren met his gaze for a moment, the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "I know you're sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "But sorry isn't enough anymore." She turned to leave, but before she did, she paused at the door. "I need time, Sebastian. I don't know if I can be here with you anymore, not after everything. I need to figure out what's next for me. I can't stay in this marriage when you've already chosen your past over your future with me." The finality of her words hit him hard. She was leaving, and there was nothing he could do to stop her. After Lauren left, the house felt colder. Sebastian stood in the silence, his mind reeling from the conversation he had just had. He had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, it felt like everything was slipping away from him. He thought back to the moment when he had first met Lauren, when everything had seemed so simple. Back then, he had believed that ambition was all that mattered, that success was the key to happiness. But now, as he faced the wreckage of his marriage and the consequences of his actions, he realized how wrong he had been. Sebastian sank into the nearest chair, his head in his hands. He couldn't fix the past, and he couldn't change the choices he had made. All he could do now was try to be the father his sons deserved. He couldn't lose them, too. Later that day, Sebastian met with Emma at a small cafe. He had been dreading this conversation, but he knew it was necessary. The boys needed him, and he couldn't afford to screw this up. "Emma," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, but I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be the father they need. I want to be a part of their lives." Emma looked at him, her expression guarded. "I don't know if you can fix everything, Sebastian," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "But I see you trying. I see the effort you're putting in, and I'm willing to give you more time with the boys. But you have to prove to them, and to me, that you're really here for them." Sebastian nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. He didn't expect forgiveness, but knowing that Emma was willing to give him a chance meant everything. "I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to all of you." As the days passed, Sebastian spent every moment he could with Sam and Noah. He took them to the park, to the zoo, and even to a local soccer game. He tried to be the father he had always wanted to be, though it was clear that rebuilding their relationship would take time. But as he watched them laugh, play, and begin to trust him again, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. For the first time in a long time, he believed that maybe, just maybe, he could fix this. He could rebuild his family, but it would take time, and it would take sacrifice. As Sebastian lay in bed that night, the weight of the day still pressing on him, he thought about the choices he had made, the mistakes he had to live with, and the road ahead. His marriage with Lauren was over, but his relationship with his sons was just beginning, and he was determined not to fail them again. But he also knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more moments where he would have to choose between his past and his future. And with each choice he made, he would have to live with the consequences. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Sebastian felt like he was finally on the right path. Sebastian stood by the window, watching as the first light of morning touched the sprawling garden outside. The house, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now seemed quieter, but in the most peaceful way. It was the calm after the storm, one that had lasted for far too long. The weight of everything that had happened over the past few weeks still lingered, but there was a new sense of clarity in the air, a breath of hope where there had been none before. His gaze shifted toward the backyard, where Sam and Noah were running around with laughter in their voices, chasing each other through the grass. He hadn't expected it to feel like this, like a second chance, a fresh start. But here he was, watching his sons. They were still young, still innocent, and still learning about the world. And for the first time in his life, Sebastian felt like he was part of that world. Everything he had worked so hard for, everything he had sacrificed for success and ambition, seemed so insignificant now in comparison to the pure joy he saw on his sons' faces. The constant pressure to prove himself, to climb higher, to be the man everyone expected him to be, it had all crumbled around him. And as much as it had been hard to admit, he realized it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. A few days had passed since Lauren's departure, and though the air in the house was still thick with the aftermath of their failed marriage, there was something different about the way things felt now. It was as if a new chapter was beginning, one that didn't revolve around the ghosts of the past or the expectations that had driven him for so many years. He had learned things about himself, about his family, and about what it really meant to be present. His work, his ambition, the empire he had built, they all seemed far less important now. What mattered most was his relationship with Sam and Noah, and the chance to be the father they deserved. His phone buzzed from the table, interrupting his thoughts. It was a text from Emma. He hadn't seen her in a couple of days, but they had been texting, updating each other on the boys. He had done his best to be the father he had promised to be, and she had seen it. Slowly, but surely, she was allowing him more time with the boys. The message read, "I think they're starting to trust you. I'm starting to believe in you too, Sebastian. Let's talk tonight about the future." His heart lifted at the words. It was a small step, but it meant everything. For so long, Emma had been cautious, keeping her distance after everything that had happened. But now, after the weeks of him proving himself, she was beginning to believe that he had truly changed. Later that evening, they met at the kitchen table. Sam and Noah were already in bed, their small bodies curled up in the guest room where they'd been staying since the Thanksgiving chaos. Sebastian could still feel the distance that Lauren's absence had created, but he knew that the road ahead would take time. Time to heal, time to rebuild, time to move forward. "Emma," Sebastian began, his voice soft, "I know I've asked a lot from you, but I want you to know something. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to make the same mistakes again." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of skepticism and hope. "You've been doing well, Sebastian. I'm starting to see the change in you. It's not easy and I'm still guarded, but I think we're on the right path." Sebastian nodded, his heart racing. "I want to be the father they need. I don't care what it costs me anymore. I want them to know me. I want to be a part of their lives every day." She sighed, looking down at her hands before speaking again. "I'm not going to lie to you, Sebastian. I'm still not sure I trust you completely. But the boys, they trust you, and that's all I need to see." For a moment, there was silence between them. The weight of everything they had been through hung in the air, but it didn't feel as heavy now. For the first time, Sebastian felt like he was truly being seen, not as the man who had failed, but as the man who was trying to do better. The following weeks were filled with moments of quiet growth. Sebastian spent more and more time with Sam and Noah, taking them to soccer games, to the lake, and on hikes through the nearby woods. He didn't try to rush anything. He knew the boys needed time to adjust, and he needed time to prove to them that he was there to stay. One afternoon, as they sat in the park watching the sunset, Sam turned to him and asked, "Dad, will we ever get to meet your family? Your mom?" Sebastian's heart skipped a beat. He had never even thought about introducing them to his side of the family. He had been so caught up in trying to fix everything that he hadn't even considered what their relationship with his extended family might look like. "I'm not sure, buddy," he said softly, ruffling Sam's hair. "But I'll make sure you meet them, when the time's right." Sam smiled, his small face lighting up with excitement. "I want to meet Grandma." Sebastian's chest tightened at the mention of his mother. He had been so focused on his mistakes, so consumed by the wreckage of his marriage and his past, that he had forgotten how important family was. He had neglected his parents, his extended family, and his own roots in his pursuit of success. But now, he knew that everything he had built meant nothing without them. Later that evening, after they had put the boys to bed, Sebastian sat down with Emma once again. The conversation they had earlier that week had left him hopeful, but he still felt a weight pressing on him. It wasn't just about the boys anymore. It was about rebuilding his entire life. "Emma," he said, looking her in the eye, "I'm ready to take the next step. I want to be here for them. I want to be here for you. I know I've got a lot to make up for, but I'm ready. I'm ready to face the consequences, no matter what they are." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied him for a long moment, her eyes softening as she took in his words. "I can see it, Sebastian," she said finally. "I can see that you're not the same man who left me all those years ago. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm willing to let you prove that you can be the father they need, and maybe, just maybe, the man I need too." Sebastian's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and relief. He didn't know what would happen between them, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. The future was uncertain, but he was no longer afraid of it. He was ready to face whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, Sebastian continued to build his relationship with Sam and Noah. Slowly but surely, the boys began to open up to him, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. They spent afternoons playing soccer, building forts in the backyard, and watching movies late into the night. Emma remained cautious, but she allowed him more time with the boys, and for the first time, she began to trust him again. He didn't expect her to forgive him overnight, but the small steps forward were enough to give him hope. In the quiet moments of reflection, Sebastian found himself thinking about Lauren. Their marriage was over, but the pain of losing her still lingered. He didn't know if there was a way to ever fix what had been broken between them. But as he looked at his sons, he realized that while he had lost one part of his life, he had gained something far more important, a second chance. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in his life, Sebastian felt ready to face it. He wasn't the same man he had been. He wasn't defined by his ambition, his success, or his mistakes. He was a father, and that was enough.